Most of us think we're good people. We like to believe that evil is something far removed from who we are, something only villains or monsters are capable of. But what if I told you that good and evil aren't as far apart as you think, and that given in the right circumstances, even you could cross the line? You're probably thinking, I'd never hurt anyone. I'd never blindly follow orders. But here's the hard truth. History and psychology tell you a very different story. What if someone in authority ordered you to do something that you knew was wrong? Would you resist, or would you find yourself crossing a line you never thought possible? We often underestimate how context can shape human behavior. The line between good and evil isn't as sharp as we like to believe. It blurs in moments of pressure, uncertainty, or authority. In the 1960s, psychologist Stanley Milgram set out to understand just that. How far would someone go when instructed by an authority figure? His findings shocked the world and revealed a truth we're often too afraid to confront. Our sense of morality is not as unshakable as we think. In 1961, Stanley Milgram designed a study to uncover how far people would go when commanded by an authority figure. Volunteers were told they were part of an experiment on learning and memory. Their task was straightforward. Administer electric shocks to the other participant, a learner, whenever they answered a question incorrectly. The shock started at a mild 15 volts and increased with every mistake. What the participants didn't know was that the learner was an actor and the shocks weren't real. But the reactions they heard, shouts, pleas, and finally silence, were chillingly convincing. As the voltage climbed, many participants hesitated. They questioned the ethics of their actions. Yet, when the experimenter in the lab coat insisted, the experiment requires you to continue, the majority obeyed. The results? A shocking 65% of participants delivered the maximum 450-volt shock, even as the learner screamed in pain or fell ominously silent. Yet 35% of participants refused to go all the way. Some stopped early, citing moral objections, while others complied partially, administering lower shocks but refusing to escalate further. The overwhelming majority, however, followed orders to some extent, showing just how difficult it is to resist authority in such situations. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Even within the 35%, many still crossed ethical lines before stopping. This means that nearly everyone in the study exhibited some level of compliance with harmful orders. The takeaway? The likelihood of people succumbing to authority and crossing moral boundaries is alarmingly high. It forces us to confront an unsettling reality. Under the right circumstances, almost anyone can become complicit in acts they never imagined themselves capable of. The Milgram experiment revealed something profoundly uncomfortable. Obedience to authority can lead ordinary people to commit extraordinary acts of harm. But this wasn't just an experiment. It's a reflection of real-world events. Take the case of Adolf Eichmann, one of the architects of the Holocaust. Eichmann's defense during his trial was chillingly simple. I was just following orders. His bureaucratic efficiency masked the reality that his actions led to the deaths of millions. And consider the Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq, where US soldiers were implicated in the torture and humiliation of detainees. Many of these soldiers claimed they were simply following the orders or expectations set by their superiors. These parallels to Milgram's findings are stark. The context of authority and normalized cruelty overpowered their individual moral compasses. This isn't just about what others have done. This is about us. How often do we silence our inner voice, convincing ourselves that someone else must know better? Whether it's at work, in social groups, or even at home, the pull to comply can be stronger than we'd like to admit. It's a quiet force that shapes our decisions more than we realize. So why do we obey? Why do we follow orders even when they conflict with our moral beliefs? The answers lie deep in human psychology. First, there's our inherent respect for authority. From childhood, we're taught that following rules and respecting leaders is essential for survival and social order. This conditioning can be so strong that we instinctively trust authority figures, even when their commands feel wrong. Then there's the fear of consequences. In Milgram's study, participants weren't physically threatened, but the presence of an authority figure was enough to make them feel they couldn't stop. In real-life scenarios, disobeying authority can mean losing your job, your status, or even your freedom. The fear of punishment keeps us compliant. Psychologists also point to what is called the agentic state. When we view ourselves as instruments of authority rather than autonomous individuals, we stop seeing ourselves as responsible for our actions. It's as if we transfer the moral weight of our decisions to the person giving the orders. Stanley Milgram captured this chillingly when he said, "The disappearance of a sense of responsibility is the most far-reaching consequence of submission to authority." But perhaps the most unsettling reason why we obey is how easy it is to rationalize. I'm just doing my job. Everyone else is doing it. These justifications help us sleep at night, but they also pave the way for harm. As Rollo May said, the opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice, it is conformity. So what else can we take away from this uncomfortable truth? If obedience to authority has the power to make us cross moral lines, how can we resist? Awareness is the first step. The Milgram experiment shows that our sense of morality can waver under pressure, but recognizing this vulnerability is a form of strength. Ask yourself, when I comply, am I doing what's right or just what's easy? Awareness of your tendencies is your best defense. Question authority, especially when it feels wrong. Blind obedience can be dangerous. That doesn't mean rejecting all authority. It means pausing to ask, is this right? Does this align with my values? This pause can make all the difference between compliance and courage. Take small acts of defiance. You don't have to lead a revolution to resist. Small acts of defiance, saying no, asking a question, or refusing to enable harm, create ripples. These ripples not only strengthen your own moral compass, but can inspire others to do the same. Understand the cost of inaction. Evil doesn't always start with grand, heinous acts. It begins in small moments of looking the other way, of going along to get along. Each time we choose compliance over conscience, we take a step down a slippery slope. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it."